President Donald Trump's plan for ending the war in Ukraine would cede land to Russia and limit the size of Kyiv's military, according to a draft obtained Thursday by the Associated Press. The proposal, originating from negotiations between Washington and Moscow, appeared decidedly favorable to Russia, which started the war nearly 4 years ago by invading its neighbor. If passed as prologue, it would seem untenable for Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, who has opposed Trump's previous calls for territorial concessions. A side agreement aims to satisfy Ukrainian security concerns by saying a future, significant, deliberate and sustained armed attack by Russia would be viewed as threatening the peace and security of the transatlantic community. The agreement, which was detailed by a senior U.S. official who was not authorized to publicly discuss the matter, does not obligate the United States or European allies to intervene on Ukraine's behalf, although it says they would determine the measures necessary to restore security. Trump's push to end the war could drive a wedge between himself and European leaders, who are likely to oppose any agreement that could be seen as rewarding Russian President Vladimir Putin for his aggression, leaving him emboldened rather than defeated. For example, the proposal would not only bar Ukraine from joining NATO but would also prevent the alliance's future expansion. Such a step would be a significant victory for Moscow, which views NATO as a threat. Putin would also gain ground he has been unable to win on the battlefield. Under the draft, Moscow would hold all the eastern Donbas region, even though approximately 14% still remains in Ukrainian hands. Ukraine's military, currently at roughly 880,000 troops, would be reduced to 600,000. The proposal opens the door to lifting sanctions on Russia and returning it to what was formerly known as the Group of Eight, which includes many of the world's biggest economies. Russia was suspended from the annual gathering in 2014 following its annexation of Crimea, a strategically important peninsula on the northern coast of the Black Sea that is internationally recognized as part of Ukraine. Trump would oversee compliance with truce. Under the proposal, Russia would commit to making no future attacks, something the White House views as a concession. In addition, $100 billion in frozen Russian assets would be dedicated to rebuilding Ukraine. However, handing over territory to Russia would be deeply unpopular in Ukraine. It also would be illegal under Ukraine's constitution. Zelenskyy has repeatedly ruled out such a possibility. Russia would also be allowed to keep half of the power generated by Europe's largest nuclear power plant, Zaporizhzhia, which it captured from Ukraine early during the war. The draft calls for a peace council that Trump will oversee. The council is an idea that Trump snatched from his lengthy peace plan aimed at bringing about a permanent end to war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. If either Ukraine or Russia violated the truce once enacted, it would face sanctions. Trump has long pushed for end to war. It was not clear whether European foreign ministers had seen the peace plan, which was first reported by Axios. Although they appeared caught by surprise, some elements of the plan were not new. Trump said last month that the Donbas region should be cut up, leaving most of it in Russian hands. The Deputy Permanent Representative of Ukraine to the United Nations told members of the Security Council that it has reviewed a draft U.S. peace plan to end its war with Russia, but that it would not give away any territory. There will never be any recognition, formal or otherwise, of Ukrainian territory temporarily occupied by the Russian Federation. Our land is not for sale, said Kristina Hayovyshin, Ukraine's UN representative. According to Associated Press, the statement comes after reports that the US and Russia drew up a plan aimed at ending the war in Ukraine that calls for major concessions from Kyiv, according to a person familiar with the matter, including granting some demands the Kremlin has made repeatedly since the full-scale invasion began nearly 4 years ago. The proposal, which could still change, calls, in part, for Ukraine to cede territory to Russia and to abandon certain weaponry, according to the person familiar with the matter, who had been briefed on the contours of the plan but was not authorized to comment publicly. It would also include the rollback of some critical U.S. military assistance. Russia, as part of the proposal, would be given effective control of the entire eastern Donbas region, Ukraine's industrial heartland made up of the Donetsk and neighboring Luhansk regions, even though Ukraine still holds part of it. Putin has listed the capture of the Donbas as the key goal of the invasion. But a peace deal that requires Kyiv to hand over territory to Russia would not only be deeply unpopular with Ukrainians, it also would be illegal under Ukraine's constitution. Zelenskyy has repeatedly ruled out such a possibility.
Head of the delegation of the European Union to the United Nations.
But the increased use of long-range weapons by the Russian Federation has placed many more civilians at risk. No region of Ukraine is safe. Just yesterday, at least 26 people, including 3 children, were reportedly killed in a Russian drone and missile attack on the western city of Territorial. Dozens more, including children, were reportedly injured. Many remain missing under the rubble.
Since May, Russia has launched the 32 largest air attacks of the entire war.
При этом со стороны Киева мы слышим отчаянные призывы о прекращении огня. Это же мы слышим и от европейских подельников Зеленского. Цена этим призывам нам очевидна. Так называемое немедленное и скорейшее прекращение огня необходимо им лишь для того, чтобы терпящее поражение за поражением ВСУ получили долгожданную передышку. Что же касается лицемерных призывов наших бывших европейских партнеров к миру, то режим Зеленского и его кураторы не нацелены на них, а эскалация противостояния в их интересах. Еще на прошлой неделе первый замминотдел Украины, хорошо знакомый вам Кислицын, прямо сказал, что Киев официально приостановил мирные переговоры с Москвой. Фактически еще летом украинская делегация перестала реагировать на предложения России, в том числе касающиеся создания рабочих групп по политическим, гуманитарным и военным вопросам.
Both Russia and Ukraine must accept a ceasefire. Further, the U.S., from the international community standpoint, the U.S. has called on all countries, particularly those in Europe, to stop buying energy resources from Russia. And we have imposed additional sanctions on Russia's 2 largest oil companies, Rosneft and Lukoil. We did so on October 22nd. We can impose further economic costs if Russia continues to ignore calls for a ceasefire. We will also continue to make weapons available for Ukraine's defense.
Representative of the United States for a statement, and I'll give the floor to the representative of Algeria.
Since the beginning of this year, Ukraine has supported President Trump's proposals aimed at ending the war. We are ready as before to work constructively with the American side as well as with our European partners and around the world so that the outcome is peace. Ukraine has officially received from the American side a draft plan. We outlined the fundamental principles that matter to our people. We agree to work on the plan's provisions in a way that would bring about a just end of the war. Strong statements, despite the propaganda and manipulation and lies that come from... While Ukraine stands ready to engage in meaningful negotiations to end this war, including at the leaders' level, our red lines are clear and unwavering. There will never be any recognition, formal or otherwise, of Ukrainian territory temporarily occupied by the Russian Federation as Russian. Our land is not for sale.